Hi, this is Mark Edward Davis with EuropeanDreamConnections.com, or EDC. I'm a published author of Mastering the Adventure of International Dating and a media spokesperson in behalf of international relationships. Oh, and a personal success story. A guy who's happily married to an amazing Ukrainian woman named Anna for the last 5 years now. Look, I want to tell you, tonight is special. This is what we do every Thursday night at 9 o'clock Eastern Time. We have these webinars to accomplish three things. We want to educate, develop, and celebrate. We educate new guys who are just discovering this and help them understand that foreign relationships are viable and how to practically make it happen. We do personal development for guys and coaching. So if they're in action and they're looking on their quest to find their queen, we want to help them. And third, we celebrate. We celebrate guys who've made it happen. And we have a community here we're developing of happily married couples and all the guys who'd like to be in that group someday. So to that end, welcome to EuropeanDreamConnections.com and our weekly Thursday night webinar. Now tonight I've got an interview. If you guys are familiar with what we've done now, I've done over 70 of these now over the course of, since I think, probably early 2011. And when we've had these, I've had some that you guys wondered, what in the heck are you doing? Because I brought on guys who got engaged, who went on other companies, who went with other tour companies. And the point is that with those, it's like, you know, the guys took my coaching and they were successful. We just celebrate international relationships and marriages and these kind of things. So tonight my guest owns a competing website, and it's not competing, but here's what I want to tell you about him. Winston Wu went out, and I was made aware of him several years ago when I first wrote my first book, and we touched base then. He created a forum to continue a conversation he was having out in the world to try to just share honestly his story about the contrast between his life from Southern California to traveling the world, the dating scene, and living overseas. So he created a forum called happierabroad.com. And I tell you, the reason why I wanted to ask Winston here tonight is because not only because he's been a supporter of ours from his website, but just because he's done a good job of analyzing the difference between life here and life overseas. And we're not going to agree on every topic, but I think there's something helpful we can gain from every insight. And so from that, Winston, I just want to thank you for being here. Thank you for being on the show, and we really look forward to this conversation with you. So welcome to the program.
Thanks, Mark. It's a great pleasure to be here.
That's awesome. Well, hey, I just want to start off just from the ground zero to the one thing we have in common is always we lived in America first. And so tell me what your first experience getting out of the country, why you did it, and how it contrasted you. Did you intentionally go on a dating scenario? Did you happen to be overseas? And what was the contrast for you in your experience?
Okay, well, it was basically just the frustration of the dating scene in America, and it seemed like you know, as Steve said, and you said in the last hour, that you know, there was just so much hostility in the dating scene, and you know, especially, I mean, toward men, and you know, especially toward Asian men, of course, and so you know, I was, before I went overseas, I was meeting a lot of girls from AOL in the late 90s,
Mm-hmm.
and like every single time, I mean, even if we had a lot in common, they just had this automatic instinct to reject every guy they meet, even if they had a lot in common, or if they had a good time together. And so there was just this rejection of every man they meet, yeah, I mean, part of that is because they're picky, and part of that is because, you know, they have this inner resistance toward men in general, and also it's because, I mean, a lot of American girls don't like Asian guys too. So there was a lot working against me, and so I was getting like a girlfriend like once every 2 or 3 years, and you know, and so I just didn't have any choices, and I realized I was wasting my life and my time, you know. So just out of total frustration, when my last American girl left me, I just suddenly decided to go to Russia, which I had. It's always been in the back of my mind for a couple of years, but I didn't have the courage to do it until like 2002, and so that was my first trip there. And when I finally went, I mean, it was like, I felt so liberated from the oppression I felt in the dating world, because I felt really, I mean, women were just so authentic and down to earth and approachable, I mean, they were as easy to meet as you see in all these American movies and sitcoms where they portray these average guys going out and meeting the hottest girls very easily, which we know doesn't happen in real life in the U.S. But I mean, amazingly, it's like that overseas. So it was very surreal. I thought that I was dreaming. I mean, it just didn't seem possible. It just seemed too good to be true, but it was. So I realized that from that comparison that the problem was not me all along. It was with the culture and the society that had somehow how destroyed the dating scene in
Mm-hmm.
America.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a very liberating feeling to know that the problem wasn't me after all, because in America, anyone who suffers is told that the problem is them and that they have to change something or fix something or improve themselves.
Sure.
So people automatically assume that the problem is them and not in society, and that insinuates that the society is normal and healthy, and in reality it's not. So it's a very big myth
Yeah.
and propaganda that I realized, this delusion, and so a lot of people have these false myths and assumptions. And so
Yeah.
overseas, I mean, I just felt like I could be myself. There was no manipulation or trying to be fake, fake or act overly confident or something. I could just be myself, and women would just want to get to know me and be curious about me. I mean, part of it is because I'm a foreigner, sure, but and also as an Asian, I stand out in Russia, but you know, but it's not just that. I mean, the way people act, is just more authentic and genuine. I mean,
Mm.
people just in a lot of countries just say what they mean. There's no pretentiousness. If they're nice, then they're genuinely nice. If they're rude, then they're genuinely rude. So you get this tell it as it is kind of attitude, which I like because it's refreshingly honest. And I'm like that way too. So
Sure.
um, yeah, I mean, and plus, I mean, like Steve said, I mean, all these women were happy to be feminine, and they were happy to dress very feminine and to look sexy, and they weren't trying to be men, and so just and there's another issue here is that it liberated me from feeling insecure every day. You see, in America, I mean, a lot of people don't consciously realize this, but in America, everyone is pretty much insecure and trying to mask it somehow or trying to
Mm.
compensate for it. And this applies to pretty much everybody. And to finally be accepted for who you are and appreciated for who you are is very liberating. In that, for the first time in my life, I don't feel so insecure anymore. And so that's liberating, and that does wonders for a person's self-esteem and mental health. So there's actually a big mental health benefit in this global dating thing, and it's not just about dating. I mean, and a lot of people don't
Mm.
realize that there's a psychological mental health benefit here
Yeah.
that's at issue, and so I mean, it just totally transformed me the first time I was in Russia, and I spent 4 weeks in Russia and then 2 weeks in Ukraine. But those 6 weeks, I mean, totally changed my life and my attitude, and the first time I finally had a purpose, to live for, and they were so memorable because every day something happened that created an interesting memory. I mean, even if the experience was positive or negative, it was still memorable. I mean, and that's the most important thing in life, because if your experiences are not memorable and they're very routine, you just go to work and come home, and nothing exciting happens or interesting happens. I mean, the time just goes by fast, and there's just no memory, good rich memories to remember, and so your life just goes on, and there's it's just I mean when nothing happens, your life goes on, and there's no memories. But when things happen, like they do in a lot of overseas countries, like in Russia, for instance, every day something interesting happened to me. So every day was memorable. So those 6 weeks were like the most memorable 6 weeks of my life,
Wow.
and they just totally transformed my consciousness. And for the first time, I finally had something to live for, and I was validated and felt liberated from the constant insecurity. that I felt every day. And so I just was on fire, and I had to share that with the world. And when I came back to the States, I mean, I was in withdrawal, but I still was on fire. I wanted to share that with the world, and I received a lot of persecution from people who didn't want to hear what I had to say. But I knew that what I experienced was real, and so I wanted to share that. And so I developed an email list where I shared these experiences, and I went back to Russia again, and it gradually grew, and eventually I started my own website in 2007, the happierabroad.com website, and that gradually grew, over time, and so and got more and more popular. So now we have a lot of people on the forum, and I've had, like, so far, like, so many fan letters from people saying they felt the same way. And right now, I have archived like 400 or 500 fan letters from people saying they've always felt the same way as me, but they thought they were the only one, or they didn't know how to express it or put it into words. And so they really appreciate that I created this website, and then they finally realized that they weren't the only one. And so it's helped validate a lot of people that felt the same way, not just myself. So it's been amazing in
It's
that
really
sense.
true. I've always loved that part about being in the site. It's one of those things where it's like somebody's saying something that I felt, but they put it in words, and because some of these topics, like the Steve Neese interview we did, it's like the topics there about the culture here and what's over there. So many of them are taboo that everybody's afraid to talk about them. If you do talk about it in a social circle, there's already these preset labels ready to be put on you about what that makes of you and what kind of person that is. That, you're interested in looking for somebody physically attractive. Oh, you pig. I mean, it's like there's some things that is like, can we just really have a conversation about this? Is it okay for a man to actually want somebody attractive? Is that really okay? I mean, I'm not talking about that's the end of the game, but can it be on my list without me being a pig? I mean, geez. And it's just funny how there are so many topics here that are taboo. And you're right. You go overseas and you can talk about anything. They're very comfortable. They're very authentic. They don't have the games. And because of that, it really is confrontational to a lot of guys when they go there the first time. They're not ready for such direct interaction and communication. It's kind of like, wow, I didn't expect a straight answer, or wait, there's no game going on here. She really means that, and it takes a couple of days for guys to get used to it, but when you do, it's like you feel liberated. You feel set free. It's like, oh my gosh. It's like you relax. And not only do you relax, you let down the guard and you can be yourself, but then you're validated. And it's like they actually are interested in you. They appreciate you for who you are, and you just enter this zone of fun. It's like play, because you're around beautiful women who are sincere, who are telling you the truth, like or not. Not all of them are going to like you, but it's like and you get to enjoy just living and going to sleep at night without things in your brain, because you know where you stand in the world. It's really quite an amazing thing. Before we go on, I wanted to mention one thing. It was so funny because you're talking about this factor when you come back and you go, really, is it just me? I was remembering that that line from Triple X, because they're saying this is the world we know it, and he goes, look, if you want me to save the world, you ought to find at least a guy who likes it the way it is first, to try to save and preserve it. Because it's like when you get over there and realize something different, it's like you're not interested in trying to preserve the mental games that are here. You're not interested in trying to reduplicate the psychological battle you have to go through here to date. It's like, nah, I found something better. It's honest, it's free, it's free of all this garbage, and there's a way you do feel liberated over there. But anyway, I just wanted to add on to that what you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, and deep down, I think every normal guy wants to feel validated, and they prefer women that are down to earth and authentic, and more, easy to get along with,
Yeah.
and who are feminine and look like women. I mean, deep down, every guy wants that, and so this is something that pretty much is natural to men, and but I mean, my website and my articles, I mean, they're not just about dating. I mean, that's a big part of it, but they're also about the social culture, the psychological benefit, and the feeling of freedom and liberation you get, when you're in a more authentic environment. Because if you think about it, I mean, the the problems, the social dysfunctions and relationship problems that you have in the U.S. that you and Steve talked about, they're really a contemporary thing. I mean, they weren't true in human history, whereas the problems you have in other countries, such as the corruption, the crime, or whatnot, those have been constant human problems for thousands of years. So they're more natural and normal problems. Um, Whereas the problems you have in the U.S., such as women trying to become men and women hating men and having a disdain for them and thinking that they're all creeps, and the social disconnectedness that, where people don't even know their neighbors and don't have a lot of meaningful interaction and connection with other people, those things are very contemporary. They were not part of human history. So in that sense, it makes the problem, these social problems in America, very unnatural. They're not part of human history, and so there's just something so dysfunctional in our social culture that has made it very unnatural and inauthentic. And not surprisingly, if you look at the statistics, the U.S. has the highest rate of mental health, mental illness in the world, and and also the highest prison population in the world. So I mean, there's something very dysfunctional that's very unnatural, and most people don't realize that because they think, because the U.S. is the richest country, that everything is great, and that everything in other countries is only worse. So they're kind of brainwashed by the media and the propaganda not to see reality the way it is, but just to see a very skewed, and I'd say if you look around, if you walk around in America, I mean, especially on the west and east coast, I mean, people just don't look very very happy, so even though, even if they have money, they still feel unhappy. There's this dissatisfied feeling within everyone, and they don't know why. So something is very, unnatural and skewed. And what I've learned from the most experienced travelers um, is that the happiest people in the world are not the people who have too much or too little, but the ones that have just enough, and they, are in balance, and they have the most meaningful human connection too. So yeah, I mean, those are all important things that a lot of people don't realize, or they feel, but they just don't know how to put it into words. And so
Let me ask you before we get on to, because I think I wanted to spend some time talking about living overseas and the different cultures there, and there's some things that are to be honored. But since you brought up the domestic issues, it's interesting to me. I'm gonna bring up the topic of marriage. When I was first coaching, I used to tell the guys, because they would question. I mean, there's been a lot of movement already in this issue, just even since I started doing what I'm doing. And I used to tell the guys, can you name me, how many in your circle, personally, your own circle of people, how many marriage relationships do you know that you could count, that you say, I love the way they interact, I would love to have a relationship that looks just like that, and emulate and be envious of and want to say that's the model for marriage. And most of the guys can't name one or two. And that is the sad part about the state of affairs. But now that I've been into this, I can tell you numerous ones with international marriages where I'm going, like, they're so wonderful together, they're so comfortable. And obviously maybe my viewpoint is tainted, but I wanted to let you address something here, because I got an email today from a guy who was saying in your site you actually were against marriage. And I think we've had a conversation before on this topic, so I don't know that that's true. I don't know what they were referring to, but I thought maybe I'd let you expound on that, because obviously we're all about finding married partners here.
well, I mean, everyone is different, and there's no one path or system that works right for everybody. But I mean, with every choice you make, there's always a trade-off. There's a pro and con, And for me, I really like my freedom, so I'm not really in a rush to get married, because I'm kind of like a adventure type, and I'm not, like a more into like settling down as much yet, at least not for now. So there's pros and cons of marriage, and plus, most there's a lot of horror stories about guys being married to American women and get losing their assets or getting treated badly during the divorce
Sure.
or something. So there's a
Well,
lot of
there's
horror
like
stories.
Steve. Yeah, no, like Steve said before, it's like in aviation. There's always the story of the plane crash that gets all the news. You know, and obviously by percentage, there's a higher divorce rate overseas than foreign. But just in general, would you, just to clear the air, would you say you're anti-marriage or not?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm anti-marriage. I mean, I just see that there's a lot of reasons why like there's some advantages to not being married, and there's some
Sure.
advantages to being married.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I mean, because I like to have a lot of freedom. It's not really an advantage to me as much. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I was to meet my soulmate, I might change my mind and reconsider. Plus, I'm
Sure.
kind of picky too. Um, but but I don't tell everyone that you shouldn't get married, because
Sure.
I mean that is up to the person. I mean, some people are marriage minded and marriage types, and some guys are
Mm-hmm.
not. I mean, in my forum we have both types. I mean, we have people that are looking for marriage and we have people that are not. But I
Right.
mean on the same token, I mean, I wouldn't tell someone that you should get married or you have to,
Right.
because
No, no, no.
if it's not right for them, then they shouldn't. Everyone has a
Right.
different path, and there's no one path that's right for everybody. So every person has
No,
to
I
decide,
appreciate that.
what makes you happy. So I don't tell you, or someone else what to do. I mean, so I
Right.
just give people options, and let them consider the options and make their own choices based on their needs. That's what I do.
No,
I'm an informer. Yeah.
I appreciate that. And I thank you for answering that because I don't know. I hadn't read this stuff, but I wanted to just address it. And frankly, the Apostle Paul says, "I wish you guys were all single like I am." You know, it's a better way. But you know, and at the
Yeah, and
same
it's
time, you know,
psychology
even
too,
as a
because
single guy, you
yeah,
want it. But I was saying,
yeah. I
even
was
as a
just saying
single
it's
guy, if you're
psychology.
dating, you want to be able to. Mm-hmm.
No, I was just
You
saying
can
it's
talk about it.
psychology.
Mistreat. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Finish first.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying some guys like to keep their options open, and some guys like to hurry up and commit. There's different types of guys. Yeah, go
Right.
ahead.
No, it's fine. I'm just saying that in either case, you always want to treat the ladies in your life with respect. Um, it's just that's one difference here. And so, guys, it's okay. Everybody can have a different opinion, but I love his experience personally, just traveling the world and seeing the difference in the culture. So, because you're a Southern California guy, born and raised, and you've been American. So, let's talk about living
Northern
overseas, what it's
California.
like. Northern California. That's right. I keep
Yeah.
forgetting. Yeah. Well, I was in Sacramento for 20 years, so technically, I guess I would be more Northern California than anything. I
Yeah.
went to Lee High School in San Jose near Los Gatos, and then lived in Santa Cruz. So I've been mostly Northern California. But so tell me about living overseas and what makes that advantageous or favorable to everything else you've seen, because you've had a chance to look at all the different options, certainly in that.
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, I mean, I don't like to tell people what to do, so I'm not saying it's for everyone, but for it's just an
No,
option to consider, because for
sure.
some people, I mean, living overseas is better, but it depends on you and your needs,
Yeah,
and what your goals are. Um, but I realized that since I was happier overseas, and felt more liberated, I could be myself. I had choices in dating, and it was
hmm,
so easy to meet women. I mean everywhere. You don't have to go to a place where people go just to meet people, like a club or a bar or a social function. You could meet people. I mean, you could meet girls just just doing normal things like going to the grocery store, or going to the supermarket, or at a bus stop or in the subway. I mean, you could just do normal things and you would meet girls, and they would be easy to talk to and easy to approach. And I was happy just having coffee with them and just interacting with them, because I
yeah,
really enjoy that social interacting. I mean, even if I wasn't dating them, it was just fun to have an attractive girl give me attention and talk to me, and
yeah,
exchange some social interaction. So I
yeah,
mean, I was happy with that, but I just realized that overall it's better for me to constantly live in that kind of environment, rather than go for a
sure.
few weeks or a few months, a year, and then come back and then feel the withdrawal again. I mean, there are things
Sure,
I liked about America too. I mean, there are many
sure.
positives and negatives in every country, but just that feeling of being liberated and not feeling so insecure every day about
Hmm.
being judged and
Mm.
trying to be something we're not. And here's a key point. I mean, when you're around people that appreciate you and for you for what you are and value you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it brings out a real authentic sense of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the kind of confidence that people think of in America, especially on the West Coast, is kind of like to me a pseudo fake type of confidence. It's something you have to manufacture or pump yourself up with by going reading a self-help book or going to a self-help seminar, which is very unnatural because I don't think you have to pump yourself up with confidence. It should be genuine and real, and when you're around people that appreciate who you are and accept you for what you are, it just brings out the natural confidence you have. And
Yes.
so a lot of people don't realize that the confidence you think of in the U.S. is actually very artificial and not real, and
It's so
like a
true.
manufactured one.
It is.
Yeah.
If I can share, I got to tell you a story on this one, and I'm going to ask you to tell a story in a minute. I'm going to ask you to tell me your favorite. We talked about this yesterday. Your favorite pickup line in Russia. So that's coming next. But first, I got to tell you this. I got to tell you this story from when I was down in Latin America, because I spent about a week down there, and it's funny because when I went down to Latin America both times, it was mostly all with African American guys. It was a blast, and they didn't think I could hang with them. We had a great time. Costa Rica, we did everything: zip lines, sail fishing, cigars at night. Of course, it was mostly just it was all for fun when I went out in the early days before I fell in love and decided, oh my gosh, I want to marry this. So I was down there in Brazil, and we were just doing the beaches and the nightclubs and just having a great time. And the funny thing was I came back from one of those on an airplane. I was doing the connecting flight from Chicago or Washington, D.C., and I had this great story. It's one of my favorites. I told this to you guys once before, but I'm in the jetway of the airplane, this airstrip on the way coming back, and I just spent this time where everywhere you go, you're just treated with such warmth and respect, and that you said this almost part of you that comes alive because you're free to it. It's not boxed. It's not criticized. You're just able to be you, and you just come alive in a great way. And that's why I say guys with good hearts will only become better when they're overseas because it allows them to be who they are, and you just release so much good, comfortable confidence in who they are in their heart. So I'm in line at this airport, and I'm hearing behind me this guy in this mousy voice, sounded like George Costanza from Seinfeld. And he's just going, "Oh, that's a really nice purse." And it was so bad. And I heard this and I'm not looking; it's behind me as we're in line to get onto the airplane. And it sounded like a very elegant woman's voice said, "Well, thank you very much. Some people don't appreciate leather in this day of animal rights concerns." And he goes, "No, I like it a lot." I was just dying. It just sounded so horrible. This guy was so insecure, But I understand him because I used to be that guy. We're always afraid to say something because you never know how it's going to come back at you. But by this time, I was so comfortable and enjoying myself, and having come back from this week where I was so honored for who I was and just feeling so alive, I got into this great conversation with her, and I just said, well, it's not a problem that it's a leather purse, but some people would say if you actually killed the animal, maybe they would have a problem with that. She goes, oh yeah, I did. She goes, and of course now I realize this is going to be fun. We're playing with each other here. And I said, well, she goes, yeah, my uncle owns a cattle ranch. I go, oh, well, that's interesting. Did you slit the throat or use the hammer to bash the head? She goes, oh, the hammer. I said, nice choice. Can take a little longer and a little messier, but that works. She goes, yeah, and I let my kids watch too. Oh, well, that's good education. At least they'll learn something, And then with that, I turned around, looked straight ahead. It was just so fun, the bantering we had and the fun, and we knew that everybody else around us probably were dying, but it was this moment I stood there going like, where did that come from? Where did that come from? Because I never would have been like that before. Because everywhere else you're going in America, like you said, like we talked about with Steve Neese, you're afraid to talk to somebody because you don't know what's going to hit you back. And the women repulse. It's like every time you approach a woman to say something, they look like you like, what do you want? What do you want? And there's this defensiveness here. And when you go overseas, there's this relaxed openness and warmth and acceptingness to everything that you get. So I just have to tell you, it is something that guys will only experience having been there. It becomes a releasing of who you are, that it's valued, that you come back feeling like, wow, I have always been of value. I just wasn't in the place where people appreciated it. And that's where I can totally understand wanting to live somewhere else where every day you're just valued for being who you are. And you get to be who you are, all around you. And there's a certain sense of comfort that comes with that. There's no agendas, and if people don't like you, though, they won't like you. But everything's black and white, and it's like I said, in my marriage, I love it because every night I go to sleep, I know exactly where I am. There's nothing unspoken. I don't worry about any issues. We know where we are, And so I totally want to support what you say. There was a part of me that just came to life from having been overseas, and I haven't lived over there. Now I'm married to one, so I get to live this every day. But I'm a different person now than I was 78 years ago because of this whole experience. And I wish it for every guy. Even if you just go for a trip, you're going to come back a changed person. And that's one of the pieces why we say that this is the year that'll change your life. Because just having been there, even for a week, you will come back a changed person because you realize how valuable you are to most of the countries around the world, that it's hard to feel that same value here in the West. All right, I'm off my soapbox. Now tell me your pickup line from Russia. This was so awesome because guys are like, well, how do you meet a woman off the street? How do you talk to somebody on a subway and get her attention? So go ahead and tell that.
Yeah, well, fortunately I did a lot of filming when I was in Russia, and you could see me interact with the girls, and I
Mm-hmm.
put those videos on my website so anyone can go and see them and see for yourself what it's like. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean the only pickup line I used was very simple, and it was this. It was Девушка, ты очень красивая, можно встретиться? And all that means is Miss, I think you're very pretty. Can I meet you? And it was just and that's it. I mean, it was so simple and short, and you know, simple and short and direct and honest, you know, and you know, so I could just be myself and say, you know, that what I want, you know, which is that I want to meet you, and you know, some girls would say, oh no, I can't, I have a boyfriend, you know, but they would never look at me that like I was a creep or you know, a bad person or something for doing that, but there was a high percentage of girls that you know, would stop and be interested in me and give me um, their phone number, you know, and would just meet up with me later, you know, and so I met a lot of girls that way, and you can see a lot of pictures of them on my website too, and I posted them there, so you could see like I've met a wide variety of different girls in Russia and some in Ukraine and also in Eastern Europe too, and in the Baltic states. Um,
Uh-huh.
just just you know, with a short simple line like that, and often if I just say excuse me, you know, a lot of girls will stop and talk to me and see what I want. They won't have this defensiveness like I'm some type of creep, or they have no business, you know, meeting me or not. And another thing
Uh-huh.
you realize is that people, you know, aren't as cliquish in most countries. Um,
Ooh, good
be,
point.
yeah, because in America, I mean, usually people keep their social interaction within a clique, you know, a close clique
Mm-hmm.
of friends, you know, and they don't socialize outside of that, you know, unless they were introduced by a mutual friend. So people don't usually talk to strangers unless it's business related, you know,
Mm.
especially in the big cities like on you know, like in the West Coast or in New York, you know, they don't talk to strangers unless it's business related, and especially
Mm-hmm.
with the women too, which are more paranoid and more careful about who they talk to. They don't
Sure, sure.
usually talk to strangers about unless they're business related, but in other countries, in most countries, I'd say the people, you know, will are more relaxed about talking to strangers. You know, they
Mm-hmm.
don't just limit their interaction to within cliques. And what I've noticed that is that in the U.S. and in Russia, that there's a lot of reversals, like inverses.
Mm-hmm.
For example, in 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 um, in the U.S. Yeah, I mean the friendliest people in America tend to be like the middle aged and you know, older people or middle aged to elderly,
Mm-hmm.
and they tend to be, you know, more males too, you know,
Hmm.
whereas the younger people are cliquish and you know, more stuck up and uptight and not as outgoing with strangers. But in
Sure.
Russia, it's like the reverse. The young people are a lot more open with strangers, and the old people seem a lot more grouchy than the old folks in the U.S. So there's
That's
actually
true.
a big inverse there, and
Yeah.
also, I mean, with the Russian and Ukrainian women, you can meet like the young women who are just 20 years old or 22, and you know, and they would be very down to earth. They would be educated. They would speak
Mm-hmm.
multiple languages and study history and philosophy and literature. You know, so I
Mm-hmm.
had a lot of, you know, intelligent conversations with you know, girls in Russia and Ukraine, you know, who
Mm-hmm.
were just you know, in their early 20s and very young, and you couldn't do that with people who are 20 years old in the USA. I mean, young people just aren't like that there. So there's a world of
Mm-hmm.
difference in the young crowd there, and so it's easier to connect. And you would find this even in Western Europe too. I mean, the young girls like in France, for example, I mean, they would, be a lot more cultured and educated and knowledgeable about the world than the young people in the U.S. And so even if they were snobby, you could still connect with them in an authentic way, just from being genuine and being interested and curious about the world,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and overall, even in a more in a first world country overseas, that there's a little bit more of an authentic experience. And another interesting inverse between Russia and America is that in America, people are usually nicer when they're at work, and putting on the nice customer service face. They're
Yeah.
nicer at work than off work. I mean they're more friendly when they're working than when they're not. When they're not working, then and they don't have to be friendly, then they're not as friendly. But in Russia,
Uh-huh.
the people there told me that it was the opposite. That
Right.
people can be grouchy at work, if they don't like their
Yeah.
job, but they don't put on a fake smile or anything. But
Right.
but but when they're off work, they're a lot more carefree and and more friendly and happy to go lucky than when they're at work, doing something they don't like. So
It's
they're
true.
more honest about their feelings and their mood, in that sense. But
Yeah.
so there's a lot of
Yeah.
interesting inverses that people don't realize.
Yeah.
But it's uh, but as far as living overseas, I know it's not. I mean that a lot of guys can't just get up and move to another country because they have a job and they have a house they have to pay for and they have roots.
Mm-hmm.
They have roots they have in America, so it's not for everybody. So like I said, I don't tell people what to do, but it's just an option to consider. Especially if you're retired or if you have a business that's mobile that you
Mm-hmm.
can receive just residual income from while you live somewhere else. Or if you're like me, who makes money online with a website, if you have an
Mm-hmm.
internet business, then it allows you more mobility to live wherever you want. So some guys are able to pick up and leave, and slowly cut their roots, and some guys are not. So it just depends.
Sure.
But I've always believed that where there's a will, there's a way. So if you want something badly enough, you'll find a way eventually to get it. I mean, even if it takes a while,
Sure.
So, and some people are happier living overseas and have been for many years
Sure.
too. So,
I have to say that your cultural thing in relation to my wife and her experiencing what you're talking about is the double reverse when she came to live here, because over there they're very pragmatic. You're exactly right. They're very straight at work. In fact, for Americans, they go over there, they think people in the workplace are rude. They go to order something and they're going to look at you like, what do you want? And then say, well, can I have some of that? They'll just go get it, cut it, and throw it out at you. They don't have to smile. It's like, hey, I'm paid to be here, paid to give you stuff. What do you want? I'll give it to you. It's funny. It feels rude to us, but it's kind of normal there. But on an interpersonal level, they're very warm. And like you said, the younger generation, especially when you go out to the discos and stuff, some of the guys in their 20s are like, hey, American, let me practice my English on you. I'll buy you a drink. Come here. You come here. Meet my friends. Meet my friends. And you get this warmth often with the younger guys that are great when you're offline. And like I said, if you meet somebody socially on the street, you ask them for something when they're not at work, they will just stop everything to answer and do that as part of the nobility of their culture to like graciously try to help you. And so the funny part is my wife comes here and she watches the fake happiness in the workplace and the grouchiness at home is exactly what you described. You go to Walmart and you have a greeter, hi, welcome to Walmart, or these other places. And we know because from us, the studies are when you have a greeter at the front door, your theft goes down. As soon as somebody realizes they've been identified by face by somebody, they don't steal psychologically. And so all these stores have these fake greeters, and they're like, everybody's asking me how I am, and they don't care. They don't know me. Who's this person? Why are they talking to me? So she got used to it, understood it's just part of our culture. People in the street say, hi, how are you? They don't mean it. They don't really care how you are. But she's realized now nobody means anything by it. We're not trying to be sinister, but they feel like that's one thing. Like sometimes we Americans feel like we're superior. Us in the West, we're the enlightened ones, and they feel like you guys are full of crap. This is all fake stuff. We're the ones who are at least real. We're at least honest about what we feel and about life. And so it is really an interesting thing. This is why I love, to me, that one of the greatest benefits of being in an international relationship is that I'm never bored. There's always a different perspective, and to me, there's a nobility about her perspective on the world and life and family and kids and the way we treat other people that has so much respect. I mean, honestly, my life is so much richer for having spent all this time with her and my wife and just in these cultures, and to realize, in my, holy am I, arrogant, I'm an American, we know how the world works attitude, I just got humbled and said, you know what, these people got it going on in so many ways that's just so respectful and noble, and we don't get everything, and I have to give some respect to these quote-unquote emerging nations that there's parts of their culture where they're not focused on money and materialism, but they got a lot of good things going for them.
Yeah, definitely. And to add to what you and Steve said earlier about relationships in America, another thing I've noticed is that when you're in a relationship or even a marriage to an American woman, she doesn't see you as one unit. I mean, she views it as two separate individuals with two separate needs and interests. So whereas a foreign woman, views you and her, as a unit to be together through thick and thin. I mean, but that's assuming this is a foreign woman with good values. There's good and bad people in every country, of course. But if you meet the right person, a good person with good values, she sees it that way. She sees you as a unit rather than as two separate individuals. And
that's true.
Another thing I've noticed, which is very revealing, is that when and this is true even with foreign women that I've dated in the U.S., like my Vietnamese ex-girlfriend, is that when the relationship ends, or when they when you break up with a foreign woman, she usually will stay friends with you, and be good-natured about it, and still wanna, she'll still email you and see you once in a while, and still maintain a friendship. Whereas with an American woman, once you break up, especially if she dumps you, I mean, she'll never want to see you again, ever. She won't even want to remain friends. I mean, she just treats you like a mortal enemy, and that reflects a huge difference in value, in attitude, because it means that inherently the foreign woman is good-natured deep down, whereas the American woman, who never wants to see any of her exes again and sees them as enemies, is actually very mean-spirited deep down, and so that really reflects a fundamental difference in their attitude, and it says a lot.
Well, I'll give a little contrast though, because in Ukraine there's somewhere in the middle, because the women there, typically when they break up, it's because the guy's cheated on them and they're really pissed. They feel betrayed, and so all they do is my wife says, we don't linger, because here, you get people that go for a year just trying to bandage and linger a relationship that nobody's liking, it's not working, and she goes, look, when we realize it's over, it's just over. We delete the guy's phone number out of our cell phone, we just go on with our lives. It's sort of a cut and go. It's like, okay, look, this, whatever happened, typically it's because of betrayal, and so that's a hard line you draw in the sand. I'm sorry, this is over, and they move on. And so for her, she says in Ukraine, we don't belabor this thing. We don't try to go for counseling. It's like when we're done, we're honest about it. Okay, we're done. Move on, and I'll move on, and that's it. And it's not so. She really says, I give myself a day to mourn, and then I'm on with my life. But that's the way she says Ukrainian ladies more handle their dating situation over there. They don't go back and try to make friends with the guys, because obviously most of the times it's they ended because of a relationship betrayal. But they do sort of. But it's not. They're not hostile. They're not out to go kill the guy. They just it's like, delete my phone. Okay, I'm single now. Move on. And that's the way anyway my wife has described it in Ukraine. So maybe that's a little different from the Philippines.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm just saying this based on my experience, yeah, I mean, most of my foreign exes, still like to remain friends, and what I've seen. So, I mean, maybe it's a percentage thing. I mean, but I'd say definitely a lot higher percentage of foreign women remain friends with their exes, or even
well,
than
especially
American
you're
women
talking
do.
about. Yeah, you're talking about something different though, because in your case, you're just simply moving on. You had a time together, and that's fine, and so you move
Yeah.
apart. That's not quite the same.
But
So I
it's not
understand what you're
just
saying.
marriage, yeah, but dating too.
Right. Right.
they're still happy to keep in touch, and to know you,
Right. Sure.
and so,
Okay.
but it's just a different attitude, So,
Sure.
let's see, I forgot what I was going to say, um, but yeah, I mean, I'd say percentage-wise, it's like that.
Hmm. No, it's cool. All right. Well, we got another few minutes here to wrap it up. What else we want to cover on this topic? You've seen so many things. You've done so much. I mean, you've talked to so many people. You came back. You ended up putting together, a site. You're living overseas. It's just there's so many different experiences you've had now that comparing your life to Northern California is just a whole different existence. But it's interesting because at least it's one of choice, and I guess that's what a lot of these guys do. I know. We've had other guys in our group that have really there's so many advantages to living overseas for cost of living, simplicity. You live in cultures where they don't use credit and it's just cash. And you spend your cash. We don't have cash, you're done spending. And it's a very free system without bills and that kind of a stress. And there are ways to make it work. And so there are various places where you've got, Rick's got livinginukraine.com, you've got happierabroad.com, where there's groups of people come together to give each other advice and counsel and say, look, hey, if you want to do it, ask us a question, and we'll try to help you figure out how to make the logistics work, because it is a big transition. It's not a small move to go from living in a commercial, credit-based, industrial, pay your taxes society to being in a developing nation. And so I'm just, if you had 4 or 5 basic tips real quick on how to make that shift, what would you tell people?
Well, I tell them for the first of all, I mean, decide, who they are and what they want, but first of all, the most important thing is to not um, not try to live by other people's expectations, or care about
Mm,
what other people will think if you do this or that, because I mean, you
yeah.
got to do what's best for you and live true to
Hmm.
yourself, So
Yeah.
so the first thing is to liberate your mind from worrying about what other people think, and to be set yourself free from that, and the next is to discover who you are and what's best for you and your goal and your purpose, and then after that, I would say to research. Do research, do a lot of research, ask a lot of questions, find experts or experienced people to help you. And I actually have a forum at happierabroad.com where people can come and ask the questions, and then we have a great team of advisors with a lot of experience, with international dating and expat living, who can give
Hmm.
a lot of great advice based on their experience. So anyone can come in and sign up and post on there, and you'll find that in the community at happierabroad.com. So
Sure.
I would suggest they research, yeah, and get some information, but you really don't know, until you try it. I
Yeah.
could sit here and say, should I go to Ukraine? Should I go to Asia? Should I go to Latin America? But you
No, I
really
agree
have
with you on
to
that.
plan to go and see what happens for you and how you feel
Sure.
and how you interact before you
Hmm.
decide, because everywhere you go there's going to be some positives and negatives,
Sure.
and you gotta find the best combination that works for you. So it's not a
Yep.
one size fits all solution. It's a
Agreed.
custom made solution based on the person's needs. But
Hmm.
it's just great that you and I are here to educate people, to to
Sure.
give them options and to present a lot more options than they've been told, because you'll never hear about this from conventional sources, or especially not from the media or anything, and because most
Yep.
people don't know about these options. Yeah, I mean they're taboo, as you
Right.
said, and
Well, and the
but I just like
secret
to
is,
open.
like anything. No, but I love what the one thing in common that we're doing together, you and I, is that we're coming from a place of experience where it's like at home these guys will mention to their friends, hey, I'm thinking about dating a woman from the country, or hey, I'm thinking about living overseas for a while, and of course they're going to mention it to guys who don't have the experience. They're going to mention to guys who've never lived overseas. They're going to mention to guys who've never dated women in other countries, and so they come from places of ignorance, and they're going to try to tell you, you know, that your ideas are stupid. And it's like, well, where do you come to that from that opinion? You know, and so here at least you come to, you know, European, you know, dream connections, and we got all these different guys who've dated overseas and couples that are involved with, you know, that we can tell you from experience, and you can meet us and sit down in person and talk to us. We could tell you firsthand, let's tell you the real story. We've actually been there. Not only we've been there, we're the successes. Okay, we're married. We got interracial marriages. We got everybody represented here, and we can tell you what it's like and how to win at the game. You know, and the same thing with your site. You know, Happier Abroad is guys who said, look, we've lived overseas, and I don't. You know, you said this before. So I don't. Not that you hate America, but it's like guys don't consider choices. But if they're going to consider choices, then at least talk to somebody who's actually done it to give you real advice. And so we're trying to be open forums of education for guys to have a place to come, ask questions of people who've actually done it and actually succeeded and actually have the thing you were looking for. And this is basic stuff. Tony Robbins will say that, modeling, right? Go find somebody who's got what you want first and ask them how they did it and then model what they did. So that's really our purpose. That's what we're out here to do. And I really appreciate the fact we had you on. Go ahead, wrap up with what you close with.
Yeah, the important thing is to remember to live in passion and not in fear, because most people are actually living in fear, you know, and they're conditioned to be fearful by the media and the culture, to be afraid of everything, you know, and so because our culture is geared toward making everyone, you know, only care about working and consuming. So so you got to break out of that and live according to your passion, not your fear. And once you do that, then things will start happening for you. Because if you think about it, most obstacles are mostly in your mind. Once you know. For example, some people might think, oh, well, there's a language barrier overseas. You know, how am I going to do this or that? But it's actually a lot easier than you think, because there's a lot of people that speak English overseas that'll help you. You know, and there's a lot of nice, helpful people. And you know, when I first went to Russia, even though I didn't speak the language, all I had to do was carry the address of where I was going on a piece of paper, and then people would point me the right way, even though I didn't speak the language. So you know, there's always a way around things, and everything is a lot. I mean, these things are a lot easier than you might think, you know, and you're actually glad that you did. And the most important thing is to live without regrets. You know, if you don't do what you want or what you love, you know, I mean, you might regret it later, and that's the worst thing. You know, it's better to make mistakes and to learn from them than to not do anything and regret it. So you just have to have that attitude, you know, and to go and try everything, to make the mistakes, learn from them, and to live according to your passion, not fear. That's the important thing, I think, the most important lesson.
Those are great closing words, my friend. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'd also, you know, if I have a few more minutes, I'd like to quote this book that I've been reading called How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World by Harry Brown. It was written in 1973, but it still applies today. And the important lesson is that you can't change, I mean, people around you or other people, or you can't change your society or culture, but you can make choices to put yourself, you know, in cultures and with people who appreciate you, who value you, who bring out the best in you, where you can break out of your shell and be yourself, and that's one of the keys to success. You know, whether it's in business, in love, or in life. I mean, is to find the people that, you know, appreciate you and can work with you and partner with you. You know, and that are compatible with you, and they don't have to be local. I mean, they could be somewhere else. I mean, so you can make those choices to be, you know, in those cultures and with those people that are more compatible with you than with your culture, because you can never change people who don't want to be changed, and you can't change your society or your culture, but you can make choices to you know, be with people that are compatible with you, who appreciate you, and that's an important lesson. You know, don't try to change your environment. Just go to where you know, function and work with best, where you're happiest. You know, that's an important life lesson. Yeah.
I love it. Follow your passions. All right, Winston, thanks so much for being on the call, man. I appreciate it. This has been great information. I'm sure the guys have really enjoyed it and loved it. Especially a bunch of our guys on the call we're anxiously hanging on to every word as they're getting ready to get on a plane next Wednesday to join us on our next Quest tour. And we're going to introduce them face-to-face to some of these amazing ladies and this amazing culture, because as our slogan says, you can't download a wife. So thanks, guys, for hanging out, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks again, Winston. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks a lot, Mark.
You got it. All right, and with that, I'm going to wrap up the recording, but we're good to go. I got all the guys, a lot of them stay, a lot of